Tonight, we're starting with something raw, vast, and deeply challenging. Life inside the Roman Empire. But not as a ruler, not as a senator. There's no laurel wreath or marble bath waiting for you. For this night, you aren't a famous figure in history. You're simply yourself, dropped without warning into a world of sandals, crowded streets, and punishment that's part of everyday life. Before we move any further, if you find what I share here meaningful, I'd appreciate it if you'd like this video, and subscribe only if you feel drawn to come back. Please tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see this little community scattered all over the world. Now, take a moment to adjust the lights. Maybe start a gentle fan for some calm white noise, and get ready to gently step into tonight's exploration. When you open your eyes, what greets you is the blend of distant voices, the clatter of chickens, and a baby's cries echoing from down the hall. That's right. You've woken up in what the Romans called an insula, their version of an apartment building. Imagine it as a tall maze built by hope, dust, and a little bit of luck, but not much safety. If you're on the upper floors, and most are, that just means you're less well off and more likely to suffer if the floor above you leaks, or worse, gives way. Your living space is more like a cupboard, with thick stone walls that collect sweat in the summer and cold in the winter months. There isn't a proper window, just a hole to bring in a little light, a whiff of air, or a pigeon if you're not lucky. You sleep on a straw mattress that's as much home to biting insects as it is to you. The single blanket carries the smell of old wool and maybe lost dreams. Furniture, decorations, those are luxuries here. You definitely don't have a stove. Starting a fire inside isn't allowed because flames would quickly consume the entire block. Fire safety rules? Not yet. What you do own is simple: a clay cup, a faded tunic, maybe a small comb if you're feeling fancy. There's no proper toilet. Not in your apartment, not even in your building. Instead, you have a chamber pot tucked in the corner, quietly judging your existence. Each day you lug it over creaking stairs, hoping you don't tumble and add yourself to the morning mess on the street. The walls are thin. You can hear your neighbors' prayers, their coughs, their arguments, and sometimes the lack of arguing, if you get the meaning. The air is thick with smoke, mustiness, and the honest scent of a city where bathing is an effort. Someone is already baking downstairs, but that's not for you. Outside, the voices of vendors fill the air, calling out prices for figs and scraps of fish. Somewhere a soldier is shouting at someone you hope will recover. You haven't left your room yet. Already you're sweating, itching, maybe breathing in dust from old pipes. Welcome to your Roman morning. You're not rich. You're not a champion in the arena. You're just one more face in the crowded masses, doing your best not to slip down the stairs or upset any spirits before midday. And there are still many hours ahead. Once you've managed the journey down those dangerous steps, another necessity is waiting: your need to find a restroom. Your home has no private toilet, no sink, nothing to ease this part of the morning. Instead, you carefully make your way down the street, balancing your pot and your privacy toward the public toilets. Rome's take on communal bathrooms. But to call them bathrooms is generous. Think of it as a bustling club for strangers, gathered together by necessity. You discover a long stone bench with cut-out holes, a simple trench beneath, carrying away everyone's contribution with the barest trickle of water. You sit if you dare, and hope no one beside you strikes up a conversation. Privacy doesn't exist. Doors aren't a part of the experience. In fact, people use this place like a square hushed voices replaced by open talks about business, bad backs, or whatever news is on their mind. Beside you, someone might be eating olives, watching you with a steady gaze. Then comes the dreaded shared sponge, dipped in vinegar or salt water, meant to clean but rarely reassuring. You use it bravely, maybe longing for your own cloth, but likely sharing what everyone before you held. If you imagine slipping away to use an alley, think again. Public urination carries penalties, and Roman authorities are hardly gentle in enforcement. When you finish, proper washing is a far-off luxury. No soap, no steady stream of water, just a basin shared by everyone. You step out feeling lighter in body, but not much brighter in spirit. But that's normal here. Breakfast follows, if you can call it that. You've survived the hazards so far, and now it's time for the first meal of the day. In Rome, though, breakfast is more ritual than comfort. There's no rich fare, no coffee or eggs to greet you. Instead, welcome to the iantaculum, a Roman start to the day, built out of nothing but old bread and watered wine. Some days you might get a slice of cheese or a few olives, but hope rarely serves more than disappointment. Forget anything resembling a modern breakfast. No coffee, no bacon, no freshly baked pastries. The bread you chew is hard, rough, sometimes baked days before, with all the charm of stone. The wine is always thinned with water, even for children, because nobody wants to start their day drunk, unless they have power. You eat where you can, standing by a fountain, sitting on a step, torn bread in one hand. If you are lucky enough to have a drop of oil or a bit of fermented fish sauce, you add flavor, even if it stings the senses. The wealthiest will have fruit or honey, but you are not among them. Vendors pass with tempting snacks, warm fritters, little cakes, and for a heartbeat, you dream. But your purse is light, so you chew your bread and let your mind wander. Your day begins not with a feast, but with a growling stomach, parched lips, and the knowledge that you'll need to walk miles in thin sandals, powered by stale crumbs and yesterday's weak wine. There is no relief, only work. After this modest meal, the city pulls you into its daily rhythm. Unless you inherit wealth, hold influence, or write poetry for a generous patron, you work, and you work hard. Maybe you're building roads, stacking bricks, cleaning the city, or moving goods. Rome needs much: sturdy roads, flowing aqueducts, grand temples. All of it is built by hands like yours, baking in the sun, with nothing for protection but thin sandals. Your work starts before the sun climbs high. The supervisor is already shouting, and if you lag behind, there are penalties. A lost day's pay, public shame, sometimes worse. Your tools are simple: a wooden shovel, your hands, a back willing to carry weight. There's no safety gear. Each moment, there's a risk. A stumble could be more than just an ache. It could change your life. If you make or repair things, you face sharp competition. Other workers crowd the market, dropping prices. Customers are picky, and it can turn personal. More polished jobs won't save you either. If you deliver messages, you run through chaos, or if you teach, your students are more likely to mock than learn. Women work too, weaving, selling, tending the house, raising children, and managing everything else. There is no rest and no true day off. You might get a short midday pause for food, but that depends on your superior's mood. In short, you work because you must, and you work until you can't. Rome may last forever, but your body won't. Surviving your job is just the start. Next is facing the Roman street, a wild thoroughfare designed long before anyone valued space or cleanliness. Picture this: the sun is shining, voices fill the air, and the roads teem with life. Not the poetic kind, the real kind. Rats, dogs, flies, livestock, beggars, sellers in many languages, children darting about, thieves quietly sizing you up. Imagine a city center without sewers or order, and everyone is carrying a goat. Rome's roads are feats of engineering, perfectly straight, well paved, but coated with a mix of dirt, spilled drinks, trash, animal droppings, and leftovers from last night's festivities. The middle of each street is, essentially, an open sewer. Miss your step, and you'll find your shoes soaked in things best left unnamed. Carts thunder past you, unconcerned with your safety. In theory, city laws control traffic, but in practice, night brings more hazards as drivers hurry, barely slowing for shadows in their way. If you escape the wheels, you still face swinging baskets, angry vendors, and the occasional fist. Smoke from cooking, incense from shrines, and the sharp odor of the public latrines drift through the air. And sometimes unattended animals simply stay where they fall. Someone may toss a cloth over them and move on. Add spontaneous parades, impromptu speeches, political rallies. The city's energy is unstoppable. A slip, an unlucky flash of anger, even crossing a noble's path at the wrong time. Any of it can end your day quickly. Amid this swirl, thirst catches hold. The good news? Rome is famous for its aqueducts, masterpieces that bring water from distant hills. The bad news? Unless you're wealthy enough for your own fountain, you share with all your neighbors, all filling jars, washing feet, maybe cleaning a child with a quick dunk. Your best chance to wash is at the public baths. They're everywhere in Rome, and almost everyone uses them. It seems civilized, but the water is hardly filtered, and privacy is not a priority here. There's loud chatter, constant company, and no soap. The water flows from one pool to the next, and you're far from the first to sit in it that day. If you expect to feel clean, you may be disappointed. Even the pipes themselves, famed for their construction, may contain lead, with all its hidden dangers. Over time, these small exposures add up: tiredness, aching joints, even deeper troubles. To stay safe, many prefer to drink diluted wine, safer than the water that carries so many risks. Rome certainly brought water to its people in ways the world hadn't seen. But unless you're in the elite, every sip and bath is a leap of faith. Living in Rome means learning to live with pain, not as an exception, but as the rhythm behind everything. Stub your toe, and there is no ice, no painkillers, just patience and grit. Break a bone, wrap it, and hope. A splinter can become a wound that changes your life. Comfort was not a Roman value. No one padded chairs or made lifting easier. You work with injury, ignore discomfort. As a soldier, you might walk for miles with blisters and heavier troubles. For women, childbirth is a trial beyond words, help limited to chance and tradition. If something serious happens, most simply hope for the best or seek homemade remedies, common herbs, a prayer, perhaps a word from a local priest. There is no anesthesia, and procedures are done awake, with only a piece of wood to bite on. Need a tooth pulled? It's more like visiting the village blacksmith than a doctor. If you're poor or enslaved, treatment is even more uncertain. Bleeding on a street corner might only draw a sharp word. Don't make a mess. Even for the fortunate, pain was seen as a fact of life, a mark of strength. Admitting weakness was frowned upon. Romans believed true character was measured by silent endurance. So, what if you do seek care? Roman medicine is built on a mix of old thought, uncertain guesses, and a collection of interesting leaves. The basic idea, that the body is balanced by 4 humors, leads to bloodletting, often the default solution for any complaint. If you're feeling unwell, the typical answer is, let some blood out. Migraines, sadness, coughs, everything seems treatable with a cut or a leech. Surgery? Romans developed tools and techniques, but had little idea about germs or anesthesia. You remain fully awake for every moment. They may pour wine or vinegar on a wound, which helps a little but burns a lot. Prescriptions might involve honey, herbs, or less appealing mixtures. Sometimes the advice is simply to pray and hope for divine intervention. If recovery doesn't come, Your only consolation is the thought that your suffering might hold some deeper meaning. Romans cared about health, but their efforts were more hopeful than truly helpful. At the end of a long day, hunger returns. Dinner is called cena, but it's not the comfort you're used to. Forget thoughts of pizza, pasta, chocolate, or even coffee. None of these have arrived yet. You gather around a simple bowl, often a porridge made from grains, beans, or lentils. The taste is earthy at best, bland at worst. Meat is rare and, when available, highly salted or flavored to cover up hints of age. Fermented fish sauce is a staple, bold, and pungently memorable. If you're especially fortunate, a boiled vegetable or a piece of cheese finds its way to your plate. Wealthy Romans sometimes display their status with extravagant dishes, more for show than flavor. For you, wine is always thinned with water. Strong drinks are frowned upon. Dessert, if there is one, might be a piece of dried fruit or a handful of nuts, unless a festival day means fasting. Napkins? Not really. You might use the hem of your tunic or a shared cloth. The meal leaves you full, if not satisfied. Your breath lingering with the sharp scents of garlic and today's troubles. As darkness falls, you may long for rest, some gentle release from the hardships of the day. But Rome in the evening is not peaceful. Entertainment is everywhere, but most of it is not gentle. The centerpiece is the great arena, the Colosseum, where crowds gather to watch fighters battle wild beasts, and executions are shown as public spectacle. The events are free, mostly to keep the population distracted while the authorities pursue their own goals. Perhaps you prefer the theater. Romans love a good play, whether tragic or a farce, with jokes that often drift into the crude. The chariot races at the Circus Maximus are exhilarating, and often deadly. Spectators bet, cheer, and sometimes fight among themselves when loyalties clash. Street performers fill the gaps. Jugglers, musicians, speakers proclaiming their latest ideas. Life is loud, restless, and always moving. In a way, Rome's constant activity helps everyone forget how tough daily existence really is. If that's not enough, there's always another glass of wine. Then there's justice. You might think that, if you've kept a low profile, the law will keep you safe. But here, the law's primary job is not to shield you. It's to remind you of your place. Social status is everything. If you're officially a Roman citizen, you receive some protections, unless someone powerful is annoyed. Non-citizens, or those enslaved, can be punished swiftly. Should a servant rise up, the whole household may pay the price. Accused of wrongdoing, you face a very public process. Wealth can buy you more witnesses, more sympathy. Defendants with no connections must hope for luck or public tears. Punishments are harsh and very visible. Thieves might lose a hand, liars could have their tongues marked, and those who anger the state face exile, or, in the worst cases, execution. Some crimes are punished in front of crowds, long and painful, designed to send a message. The city's guards are more interested in bribes or self-preservation than helping someone in need. The laws are clear, but they serve the few, not the many. After all this, maybe you look for comfort in faith. But in Rome, religion is less about personal belief and more about public ritual. The empire is full of shrines, smoky air, and countless deities. There's a god for nearly every detail of life. You don't choose your gods. You respect them, make offerings, join public observances. People watch how you pray. Skipping a ritual or missing a festival brings suspicion, not just for you, but your neighbors too. Fail to join a procession, and whispers start. Every feast day brings sacrifices, with hands raised in hope of protection. The air is thick with tradition and a touch of fear. And then there's the emperor, treated as almost divine, his praises set alongside those of the older gods. Participation in such ceremonies is expected, and doing otherwise marks you as an outsider, dangerous in a city wary of novelty. Faith is more about doing the right thing at the right time, in full view of everyone, than searching for deeper meaning. Social life is even more complex. Rome's hierarchy is strict and slippery, shaped by fortune, birth, and sometimes cunning. Rich senators, powerful business folk, then everyday citizens, former slaves, and those outside the system. To climb this ladder, you need powerful allies. Each morning you visit your patron, waiting among other hopefuls, offering compliments and seeking a favor, perhaps a coin, a meal, or simply support. Every act is under scrutiny. Clothes must be clean, speech careful, friends chosen with wisdom. Ambition is watched with anxiety, and rising too quickly can attract dangerous attention. Rumors travel as quickly as the wind, and a stray word at a banquet can change your fate. Most marriages are agreements, not matters of love. Even if you rise high, a single missed step can send you tumbling, sometimes without warning. The anxiety never truly leaves. As daylight fades, you hope for quiet. But Roman nights are filled with their own hazards. Lighting is rare, unless you're well off. Most navigate by memory or moonlight, risking a misstep or a stolen purse in unlit alleys. The guards are few, tired, and susceptible to any bribe offered. Those looking for trouble flood the streets. Worst of all, fire is a constant threat. The buildings are flammable, packed tightly, and a single overturned lamp can devour a whole neighborhood. There's no organized alarm. At best, you grab what you can and run, hoping to escape. Noise never really ends. Parties, religious celebrations, arguments, and the occasional outburst can echo all night. Sleep, like safety, is reserved for those with wealth, weapons, or luck on their side. When the sun sets, you might hope for a gentle end to the day. Instead, Rome simply grows wilder as darkness falls. Fires threaten, crime waits in the shadows, and the streets come alive with celebration, argument, and unrest. Finding your way means moving swiftly, carrying little, and trusting in your own wits. If you do sleep, you do so in a room that creaks and moans, with rats in the walls and neighbors lamenting, sometimes in passion, sometimes in pain. You press your face to your pillow, longing for silence. But Rome remains restless. Darkness is never truly still. And in the morning, it all begins again. Surviving the crowded building, braving public bathrooms, dodging carts, living with the threat of illness, carrying the memory of an unsparing day. You followed traditions, obeyed rules, and lay awake through the noise. Most people today, with our comforts and medicines, would struggle to make it to midday amid such challenges. Your patience would wear thin, your strength would be tested. And yet, the Romans endured. For years and years they worked, dreamed, struggled, and survived. In all this hardship, in the grime and hardship, Rome flourished. People built roads, aqueducts, libraries, temples, and theaters. The empire's laws, its stories, its ways of building and thinking left a mark on the world that still echoes today. But the price was high. For most people, life was never easy. Each day was a test of body, of patience, of endurance. And yet, they managed. They built with sweat, ambition, and the simple drive to keep going. You might find yourself yearning for modern comforts long before your first full Roman day has ended. You would trade anything for a warm shower and a soft chair. And that's all right. You don't need to prove you could survive ancient Rome, only that you can appreciate how remarkable its people were. Now, imagine a very different life, that of a princess in the distant kingdom of Parthia, not long before Rome's height. Your name is unfamiliar, your world shaped not by comfort, but by challenge. Let's call you Rhodia, royal by birth, raised among the realities of power. In her world, families spent their energy not on celebrations, but on putting down rebellions and handling daily dangers. Rhodia's father was a king who expanded his realm by willpower and the sword. Each gain, though, brought new troubles. Fresh uprisings, uncertain allies, and neighbors wary of their new borders. As a young girl, Rhodia watched emissaries argue, generals plan, scribes record shifting loyalties. She learned diplomacy and leadership more than soft skills, including how to wear armor when goings got tough. Parthian noblewomen often held unusual power. Some managed cities, others arranged marriages to tie alliances. A special few even made a name for themselves on the battlefield. Rhodia, over time, became not just a symbol of royal lineage, but a living sign of Parthian pride. Expectations grew. She would either marry a king or become a ruler in spirit. When crisis struck, when rebels in the western reaches rose up, confident and brazen, everything changed. What made these rebels unusual was their courage. Not just common malcontents, they were local leaders bold enough to defy the heart of the empire, certain that no one strong would oppose them. Instead of waiting for the usual general, Rhodia herself stepped forward. This was not empty pageantry. She rode into battle with her soldiers, wearing armor, and made a dramatic promise. She would not wash or comb her hair until the rebellion had ended. It was an oath made for others to see, a visible sign that her own dignity was now tied to the fate of the empire. Each time someone saw her tangled, dust-dark hair, it was proof. The fight was ongoing. This choice worked. Soldiers rallied. She was not just a princess, but a leader willing to sacrifice comfort for victory. Her unkempt hair became a rallying flag. Meanwhile, the rebels were left uncertain. They hadn't planned to face an unbreakable woman leading from the front. The campaign lasted months. The rebel-held cities were strong, well-supplied, and expected hesitation. Rhodia's approach was different. Quick attacks, careful retreats, using time itself as a weapon. She joined her troops, sharing their daily routines, never hiding away. Her hair became more knotted, her legend grew. To the rebels, she became the Witch Queen, not for any magical powers, but for her unyielding discipline and her refusal to act like a typical noblewoman. It was said that by the third month, her hair formed thick ropes of dust and sweat, fueling stories of her ferocity. Yet, there was only determination and skill at work. When the final enemy stronghold was surrounded, morale within began to crumble. Food ran out, leaders argued, rumors of desertion spread. In time, one carelessly held gate was found. Rhodia's forces slipped inside, and by the next morning, the city was under her control. Her victory was marked not with parades, but with water. Soldiers gathered as she finally washed her hair after months of conflict. Each knot worked out stood for a city reclaimed, each task performed in the open, not in secret chambers. Watching, her troops found new pride. Their troubles had not been in vain. When it was over, she could have raced to the capital for praise and rewards. Yet she chose to travel slowly, revisiting each city, making certain order was restored. She stayed close to her people, listening, sharing meals, forging her story in memory, not gold. In every tangled strand and stubborn battle, Rhodia became more than a princess. She became a symbol, not by birthright alone, but by the strength that comes from refusing to quit, no matter how weary the world might grow. And so, through hardship and grit, her legend and those of countless others remind us, strength is found not just in thrones and crowns, but in every ordinary soul who stands, endures, and leads by example, even when the world offers little comfort in return. This was no empty ritual. it was careful planning. Rhodogon understood the hidden risk that winning brings, how easily success can slip into pride and comfort. Kingdoms do not crumble from defeat alone. Sometimes they fade because their people forget why they struggled to begin with. She wanted both her supporters and former foes to see that the power of Pythia was not just measured in horses and wealth. It lived within her. She showed through her own choices that true strength meant embracing difficulty instead of luxury, and earning trust by her actions rather than demanding it. That trust met her wherever she traveled. Crowds came together, not to marvel at a distant or glittering ruler, but to glimpse someone genuine. There was nothing artificial about her. She was as she was, weathered, plain, and very much human. She did not rule through fear, but through responsibility, requesting honest updates, listening to grievances, paying for military needs herself. She gave rewards to cities that stayed true and offered forgiveness, but only carefully, only to those who truly regretted their rebellion. By the time she returned to the royal palace, the tales of her journey were already growing into legend. Scribes hurried to write her story. Artists debated how to capture her image. Was she to be remembered wild from war, or serene and renewed? Ministers quietly discussed what it meant for a woman to lead armies, to hold her oath, and now, to stand in the core of Pathian authority, holding the loyalty of half the nation in her hands. That created a problem. What should be done with a princess more beloved than most kings? Some suggested marrying her away, hoping it would lessen her influence. Others wanted to place her forever on the border, guarding their lands. But titles and politics seemed unimportant to Rhodogon. She had shown what needed to be shown. Battlefield Earth had been her throne, the dust, her crown. Her name was carried in the hearts of those she had led, requiring no official inscription. No coronation was necessary. History itself had crowned her, not with metal but with memory. After her campaigns, Rhodogon did not chase after attention, but it followed her just the same. She became a favorite subject for poems, sculptures, gossip, and admiration, not because she sought this, but because she had rightfully earned it. Soldiers who had fought under her command each returned with a story, and these stories multiplied her legend, making her seem larger, more lasting, almost untouchable. Yet within the palace, where politics wound through hidden corridors, her quiet was unsettling. She did not brag. She did not campaign for advancement or ask for estates. She simply watched, listened, and recognized that the true battle had moved, no longer taking place atop walls but in whispered arguments. Even the king, whether her father or brother depending on that particular moment in Pathian succession, needed to be cautious. Rhodogon's esteem was unique among those at court, not built on beauty or birth, but leadership and honor. She turned her oath into policy, her unwashed appearance into a story that inspired. Even her silence was a careful tactic, as deliberate as her plans in war. She did not share her next intention, perhaps uncertain herself. For the first time in many years, she was not fighting, not commanding, not thinking one step ahead of rebels. She was still, and her stillness left the powerful unsettled. What could such a woman do next? Some historians suggest that Rhodogon's quiet became its own form of power. Her presence alone, every slight nod, each thoughtful glance, carried weight. Officials grew cautious, fearing her disapproval. Generals hesitated, hoping she would guide their choices. This was no effortless passivity. It was an active tool. She learned that sometimes saying nothing creates the strongest impact. And so, Rhodogon lasted as a legend, moving through those palace halls. Her hair, at last cleaned and woven with memory, marked her as someone who challenged customs simply by walking among them. She demonstrated that Pathian power was not reserved for men. It could wear dust, ride to battle, and return with entire cities yielded. Now, she chose patience. Sometimes, standing still is the wisest move. As years passed, Rhodogon's name gradually slipped from the formal record. Court historians who like to celebrate kings and dynasties ignored her disruptive campaign. Her once potent silence became their reason to erase her. No great tombs were raised, no state-funded poems told her story. It was as if officialdom hoped to let her drift into forgetfulness. But that is not how true legends fade. They need no permission to live on. In the places where she rode, in villages she spared, mothers would tell their daughters stories, not as fantasy, but as a lesson for any man who doubted a determined woman. Soldiers taught her tactics as if sacred, and former enemies, decades later, whispered that Rhodogon might return someday, wild-haired and fierce. There is something quietly unsettling about someone who breaks tradition and still wins. Rhodogon never wanted to adorn a court or perform gentle arts for display. She left a streak across history like a meteor, bright, urgent, then gone. Later scholars have wondered where she went. Some argue she retired for peace, others that she became a secret advisor, or perhaps even rode out once more and disappeared into legend. What is certain is this: her memory endured among her people. She may have never worn a crown, but in many ways she ruled more completely than any monarch. Rhodogon changed the meaning of loyalty. She showed that a promise, even one as simple as never combing one's hair, could be as meaningful as the grandest law, and far more inspiring. While official chronicles might give her only a single line, the dust of Phthia will always remember. Immortality does not demand a statue in marble. It only needs a kept promise and a victory. Long after her death, Rhodogon's tale remains both familiar and elusive. No portrait in stone recalls her name. No royal resting place declares her accomplishments. But in the memories of those who admire courage, endurance, and inner fire, she is unending. Not recalled as kings are, but as nature's own force. Her greatest achievement was not conquering new lands, but upending expectation. In a world that told women to wait behind barriers while their names were used by men who fought, Rhodogon tore down the veil and stepped forward herself, unshod, helmet in hand. She never requested authority. She took it. The kingdom did not collapse in response. Instead, it followed. What she truly taught cannot be commanded by law. That trust grows, not from fear, but from seeing a leader endure beside their soldiers, choose discipline over comfort, and keep a promise past all expectation. She was, of course, as imperfect as any legendary figure. Yet her story lingers, precisely because it was not neat, but honest, messy, and authentic, much like her hair on the day of final victory. In mud and dust, she displayed dignity. In her vow, she gave an example of leadership greater than any title. When those who served her looked her way, they saw someone who cared for the cause more than her own looks, and that is the memory that records could not erase. Even after the fall of Phthia, as cities vanished into sand, her legend rises in moments of defiance. Artists imagine her, writers trace her steps. A vow to remain unwashed until victory may sound unusual, but to those who fought against injustice, it makes perfect sense. Rhodogon never sought to dazzle. She relied on determination, not glamour. In the end, it was the earth's dust that crowned her, not precious metal. The same dust others flee in death, yet the same she wore with pride. Kings may have forgotten her, chroniclers ignored her, but the soil remembers. and that is where legends find eternity. Before battles swept across the sands and kings feared her name, Tomia was a daughter of the wind, raised on the open steppe. Her homeland was neither ornate nor filled with grand philosophies. It was untamed, fierce, and endless. She belonged to the Maasai, strong nomads, expert riders and archers, living lives shaped by trial, honor, and war. Not much is preserved about Tomia's early days, but we can picture her growing up, learning to ride before she could walk steadily and practicing with a bow as soon as she could form words. Girls among the Maasai were never hidden. They trained with their brothers, rode with warriors, and grew up shaped by hardship. Leadership was earned by sacrifice, and as a young woman, Tomia already bled for her kin. Her people honored the sun and sky, lived by their herds, and sent their dead to rest armed for battle beyond this world. Their homes were not cities or golden shrines, but pride, and when enemies threatened, they responded not with words, but with arrows. Tomia most likely claimed leadership after losing her husband, who had led before her. But she did not simply inherit. She seized command. In an age when most women were seen as possessions, Tomia gathered fighters, negotiated with rulers, and dared to speak as an equal. When words were denied, she made herself heard in action. She was more than a queen. She was a steppe queen, a strategist in leather and bronze, and soon she would face the era's mightiest power. Greatness, especially for women, comes with cost. As Tomia secured her position, rumors grew louder beyond the southern mountains. Watching her was Cyrus, a king who wanted more. The wind howled across the grasslands, and soon the daughter of the steppe would enter legend. As Tomia led her people under open skies far south, another form of strength grew, orderly, determined, and vast. Cyrus, founder of the Achaemenid Empire, had already overrun Lydia in the west and Babylon in the south. His banners flew over deserts, hills, and cities, covering languages and peoples in endless waves. Yet Cyrus was not content. He looked always towards the next frontier. For him, the Maasai were both threat and opportunity. They did not own treasure-laden cities, but they guarded the empire's northeastern edge, controlling vital regions, resources, and trade. Even more, they had something priceless: pride. And to Cyrus, pride could be shaped or broken. As a renowned schemer and diplomat, Cyrus did not immediately reach for his sword. He tried a method often used by kings to weaken rivals quietly: a marriage proposal. Ancient writers, especially Herodotus, tell us that Cyrus sent envoys to Tomia, offering to join their houses, supposedly uniting Great Persia and the warrior queen. Tomia, however, saw through the proposal. It was not love, but a careful effort to seize her people without battle. She refused, and that rejection was bitterly received in the halls of Persian power. With words spent, Cyrus moved to force. He ordered his troops to cross the Araxes River, the wild border separating Persia from Maasai lands. What Tomia would not hand over, he would take. But she was ready. She understood the land, how her people fought from horseback, swift and fearless. She also knew Cyrus wanted more than land. He aimed to break a woman's defiance. The world's strongest ruler had declared war, but he did not understand the storm gathering on the steppe. Confident in his experience, Cyrus believed he could outwit wild nomads who lacked cities to defend. He did not realize that he now faced someone just as clever, but far more enraged. After refusing the marriage, Tomia warned, "If you cross the Araxes, you will regret it." Undeterred, Cyrus constructed bridges with boats and entered Maasai lands. Tomia did not attack right away. instead drawing the Persians further into unfamiliar territory. There, the invaders found an abandoned camp, stocked with supplies and, importantly, wine. The Massey rarely drank such luxuries, but for the Persians, it was an enticing find. Cyrus, proud and perhaps overconfident, took the bait. In his absence, a trusted officer, General Harpagus, led part of the army. That night, Ptomia's fighters returned. The Persians, unprepared and intoxicated, were caught completely off guard. The fight was fierce and bloody. Among the fallen was Sparapus, Ptomia's own son and a commander. Accounts differ over his end. Some say he was taken and, facing captivity, chose his own death. Others that he perished in the battle itself. All that is sure, when Ptomia heard the news, something inside her broke, then hardened. Her grief erupted. Her fury became legend. She sent a message to Cyrus, no longer a warning but a promise. You crave blood, and I will see that you have your fill. She vowed to soak the land in Persian blood, her revenge echoing loudly. Her son was gone, her territory invaded. Now Cyrus would meet not just a queen, but a mourning mother, and she would be the last sight he would ever see. This next encounter would be no mere clash, it would be judgment. As the sun rose, sharp and bright, Ptomia faced her army. Not simply a queen, but the storm itself, ready for battle. Her fighters, toughened by a life outdoors, marked their faces with ash. Their purpose was now personal. Though experienced, Cyrus still misunderstood. He thought the Maasai would be unruly, easy to scatter, just another steppe tribe. He did not expect such planning or such burning rage. Ptomia led her riders in a bold counterattack. Across the open grass, her cavalry charged. Arrows flew, axes struck, each move fueled by pain and determination. For the disciplined, brave Persian troops, this onslaught was unexpected and overwhelming. She fought beside her warriors, her presence driving them forward. Every blow, every rush, was revenge for her son. The Persian lines crumbled. Many died where they stood. Others ran into the endless steppe, only to be chased down. By the end, Cyrus, who had toppled Babylon, Lydia, and so many others, had fallen too. Whether he died in the fighting or after being captured is disputed, but he was defeated on Ptomia's terms. What came after added to her legend. According to Herodotus, Ptomia found Cyrus's body and had his head severed. Then, as a final symbolic act of payback, she plunged it into a wineskin filled with blood. "Drink your fill," she declared, "of the very blood you sought." Is this detail exact history or poetic imagery? Maybe both. The message is clear. She could not be conquered. When the noise faded, Ptomia stood as the victor. She had done what no army or ruler before her had managed. For Persia, the news was a huge blow. Their founder was gone. The wound would trouble their pride for generations. For Ptomia and the Maasai, this was more than settling a score. It was a statement. They had protected their freedom, not just with arms, but with honor. Afterward, Ptomia left no record of what followed. Her passing, her later life, remain a mystery. She seems to have returned to the wind and let the legend move on. Over generations, people tried to fill in the empty spaces. She became a symbol. To Persians, a bitter warning. To Greeks, a curious mix of foreign and noble. To the people of the steppe, a spirit queen who still rides under open skies. Medieval writers imagined her in armor. Renaissance artists painted her mighty over Cyrus's body. Every era saw something new in her. Avenger, wild leader, proof of fate's uncertainty, or a model of powerful womanhood. One truth runs through it all. She altered the course of history. Ptomia did not inherit her power. She created it with fire and courage. She proved not every empire rises. Some fall beneath the hooves of the determined. Much of what survives about Tomia comes not from her people. They left few records, but from a Greek, Herodotus. He called her a queen of astonishing resolve and fierce vengeance. But he was not just a reporter. He blended fact with lesson. In his hands, Tomia was the final challenge to endless ambition. Cyrus, who defeated so many, fell not to another king, but to a woman driven by love for her child. Herodotus's version magnified her acts, especially the final gruesome revenge. Maybe he exaggerated, maybe not. Modern historians debate what is fact and what is creation, but nearly all agree that Tomia's defeat of Cyrus was likely real. The rest, Herodotus's view of outsiders, his Greek bias, and the transformation of Tomia into either noble heroine or exotic opponent, is part of history's uncertain memory. Yet, if the facts grew hazy, the lesson sharpened. Thanks to Herodotus, Tomia became more than a faint mention. Her story took root in myth, joining the line between what truly happened and what her legend needed to be. In a world ruled by kings, here was a queen who knelt before no one, and whose victory left her conqueror in the dust. Although she never ruled a sprawling kingdom or passed down laws on gold tablets, Tomia's Messiah lived by movement, by the call of the wild, not by walls. That is why her mark was left not in statues or coins, but as stories, passed from fire to fire. The Massi were one among many tribes crossing Central Asia, all skilled in range-wise archery, all free from empire's reach. Tomia's role as a woman leader was rare, but not entirely unique. On the steppe, women found more freedom. They rode, hunted, sometimes led. Archaeology has found burials of women warriors laid to rest with weapons, showing that stories of powerful queens were not only myth. Tomia became the greatest of them, not through birthright, but through respect, determination, and skill. She brought together scattered groups, led with strength, and commanded in battle. Yet her memory exists mainly in the words of others, as a warning to her enemies, as a marvel, as a treasured memory in the songs of her people. Empires may vanish, their stones worn down by time, but in the steppe winds, the legends endure. Tomia, steadfast and grieving, became those winds' very voice. Generations passed, and the grand kingdoms that once surrounded the Masai crumbled. While Cyrus's heirs built, battled, and faded, Tomia's memory outlasted them, not in the records of kings, but in the resilience of those unwilling to bow. She grew into more than a figurehead, a symbol of resistance, strength, and the wild spirit of the grasslands. Divorced from any empire, Tomia's legacy became uniquely powerful, both dangerous and inspiring. Even as distant chroniclers tried to reshape her image, sometimes praising her fairness, other times fearing her, she lived on. During the Renaissance, European artists read Herodotus and painted Tomia as regal and victorious, towering over her fallen foe. Her legend moved from battlefield to classroom, from song to statue, reborn for every era. In the modern world, she became a national symbol in Central Asia, a reminder of proud, independent roots that existed before outside rule. Her name found new life in literature, civic ceremonies, coins, and memory. A woman who once led on horseback through open country now journeys through time as a force for pride. Tomia's story is not a tale of perfection or gentle virtue. She was fierce, sometimes hard, kind only to those who deserved it. She was resistance embodied. The blood of an empire on her hands became her crown, worn without regret. History often remembers those who build monuments, write laws, or stamp their faces on coins. Tomia did none of that. She did not rule forever, but she could never be erased. She stands as a contradiction to the usual stories about women in history, not as an afterthought, but as a turning point. Tamia did not wait for attention, she seized it. She did not ride behind a king. She met one in open combat and claimed victory. That is why her memory finds its way into classrooms, from Central Asia to Europe. Not only because she overcame Cyrus the Great, but because she dared to answer him. She was not saving an empire. She was defending freedom. Hers was freedom that circled beneath the stars, carried on the gallop of horses, impossible to simply mark on any map. Today, statues of her rise in Central Asian capitals. Her face shines from coins and books. To her descendants, she is a founding mother, a reminder of an ancient, fiercely free past. Her legacy is not built on submission, but on action and resolve. In a world still divided by power, ancestry, and gender, Tomia offers something vital. She teaches that dignity is earned, not granted, and sometimes it looks like a mother who will not let her son's death pass unanswered. Why do some names endure while others fade? Tomia remained because she was unforgettable. At a time when women vanished into the shadows, she stepped out fully, weapon in hand and conviction in her heart, and wrote her story into history itself. Kingdoms fall, monuments decay, but legends remain. And somewhere, in the whispering wind, a queen rides forever, indomitable, unforgotten. In ancient Egypt, tending bees was never just a small pastime. It was a practice guided by both science and faith. Well before today's bee farms, Egyptians had already put in place a carefully managed moving system for caring for bees and collecting their honey. By about 2400 BCE, tomb walls in sunlit Saqqara showed detailed scenes of beekeeping at work. For Egyptians, honey was not only a treat to be harvested. Its handling was deeply woven into their farming, medicine, worship, and beliefs about the afterlife. Egyptian hives were simple horizontal clay tubes, placed one beside another in neat lines. They looked more like large clay pipes than anything in use today, with a design that allowed them to be shifted up and down the Nile each season, following blossoming flowers as the river's floods rose and fell. This practice, called transhumance, was remarkably advanced, almost as if they had invented a way to track the best blossom spots centuries before technology made it easy. To collect honey, keepers would blow smoke, using made clay or stone tubes, so the bees would stay calm. There were no protective suits, only skill, trust, and bravery. The honeycomb was carefully removed for uses far beyond food. Honey was applied in medicines, for preserving the deceased, and in religious rites. The Egyptians saw honey as a sacred offering from the gods, closely tied to Ra, the sun god. In their stories, bees were said to be born from Ra's tears as they fell to earth. This belief shaped how Egyptians treated bees, as important friends between the world of people and the world of gods. Honey was used in temples, in rituals, and was even traded like money. Its healing properties filled ancient medical texts, where honey appears in more than 500 treatments, combined with herbs, wine, or milk to ease wounds, infections, and stomach troubles. Even before the science was known, its antibacterial effects were trusted. Beeswax, too, had many uses, in makeup, mummification, and as writing material for tablets. It became a valued part of daily life, not just for priests, but also for scribes and healers. In Egypt, the beehive was more than a source of sweetness. It was a symbol of wholeness and health, nurtured by both people and the gods. While Egypt focused on the order and holiness of beekeeping, ancient Mesopotamia contributed something different, but just as important: laws. The birthplace of cities and writing knew the value of honey and the need to protect it. Though we don't see as much art showing Mesopotamian beekeeping, its presence appears in their clay tablets and ancient rule books. Bees and honey are mentioned in Sumerian and later Akkadian and Babylonian texts, sometimes as bee gardens or temple apiaries, often found on temple lands or palaces, showing that honey was a resource for the powerful. Honey and beeswax were part of offerings, medicines, meals, and commerce. The loss or theft of a hive could cause real hardship. The Code of Hammurabi, dating to about 1754 BCE, even speaks of bee disputes. If bees strayed and caused harm, or honey was taken, payment had to be made, sometimes in silver, sometimes in goods. In a time where most exchanges were measured in grain, honey had its own legal status. Bees were also seen as more than just animals. Some writings describe them as heavenly messengers, linked with gods of farming and war. Beeswax, practical and prized, was used to seal documents or form ritual figures. The actual design of Mesopotamian hives is lost, but it's likely they were constructed of mud brick baskets or woven forms, kept in shaded gardens or on rooftops, sheltered from the heat. For Mesopotamia, beekeeping meant fairness, order, and making sure resources were protected. A hive was like a tiny version of society itself. High in ancient Anatolia, before the Greeks became widespread, the Hittites quietly perfected their own beekeeping craft. In their eyes, bees were not just important in farming, but also as sacred purifiers and messengers between the mortal world and the divine. Hittite records, especially from the 14th and 13th centuries BCE, often mention bees during ceremonies to cleanse people and things of uncleanliness. One famous ritual called upon a bee to carry away evil or anger from the gods, letting it fly free rather than harm it. A rare kindness in ancient rites, showing deep respect for these insects. Honey served both as a delicacy and as an essential part of offerings and rituals, burned or poured with wine and milk to connect earth and the heavens. Their hives were probably clay or straw tubes, arranged much like Egypt's, moved and tended by keepers working for temples or royalty. Much of the evidence is fragmentary, but it hints at thoughtful care and spiritual purpose. Hittite observers even noticed seasonal bee behaviors, tracking their patterns with blooming flowers. In their homeland, the murmur of a hive was more than background. It was the heartbeat of both fields and shrines. The ancient Greeks did not simply use bees. They marveled at them, respected them, and drew lessons from their tiny societies. For Greeks, hives held more than honey. They served as models for strong, disciplined city-states and were viewed as tiny glimpses of divine organization. Greek beekeepers advanced their skills with innovation and observation. Unlike earlier clay tubes, they created clay hives with lids and sections, making it possible to collect honey without destroying the colony. They were also pioneers of using smoke, developing ceramic pipes to gently calm bees for harvest, a technique that made sure the colonies could last year after year. Aristotle, one of the most influential Greek thinkers, observed bees closely, and in his writing he noted that bees took on different tasks. Some gathered nectar, some guarded, and one led, though he thought it was a king bee. Though not quite right about the leader's gender, his careful study set a standard for learning about bee life. Honey was everywhere in Greek life. It flavored wine, preserved fruit, and enriched sweets. Doctors often used it in treating wounds for its healing powers. The Greeks believed that even the food of the gods, ambrosia, was a mix of honey and wine. Mythologically, bees were tied to Artemis, protector of wild things, and Demeter, goddess of the harvest. Priestesses dedicated to these deities were called Melissa, the Greek word for bee, and carried great symbolic meaning. For the Greeks, studying the hive was not just scientific curiosity, but a way of understanding how nature and communities worked in harmony. Where Greeks admired, Romans organized. Beekeeping in the Roman Empire scaled up to match their far-reaching world. From the vineyards of Gaul to the olive groves of Hispania, Romans treated hives as another piece of carefully managed agriculture. They built on Greek and Etruscan knowledge, but made it more systematic. Ancient Roman agricultural books recorded well-tested advice for building hives, harvesting honey, and moving bees from place to place. They described hives made from logs, bark, clay tubes, and baskets, tailored by climate and region, more insulation for cold, better airflow for heat. To gather honey, Romans sometimes packed clay pots with smoldering herbs like thyme, calming bees and possibly adding flavor. Iron knives separated combs, wax was melted and shaped for candles, writing tools, sometimes even for waterproofing ships. Honey was not just dessert or sweetener. It flavored food for rich and poor, fueled soldiers, and appeared in many remedies. Roman physicians recommended honey for wounds, sore throats, fever, and digestion. The healing properties were well known, even without modern science. Perhaps the most Roman aspect was their drive for efficiency. Great estates sometimes had whole honey farms, tracked in careful records and managed by stewards. Enslaved laborers did the work. Surpluses were traded or shipped across the empire. Romans saw each hive as a miniature version of a good, orderly household, every bee with a place, every effort leading to abundance. Across these civilizations, bees and honey were more than useful products. They opened a window to the sacred. Ancient peoples saw bees as spiritual beings, flitting between earth and unseen realms. In Egypt, bees were woven into myths of creation, embodying the sun god's blessing, honey offered on altars, and even marking royal power. The rulers of Lower Egypt were known as he of the sedge and the bee, linking kingship to nature's harmony. In Greece, the bee was a feminine symbol of wisdom and connection. Priestesses, called Melissa, served goddesses of fertility and the wild. Some accounts say even the oracle at Delphi was originally guided by bee priestesses, and the Delphic bee became a poetic title for the famous seer. The hive was often compared to society at its best: orderly, communal, productive. In Mesopotamia's rituals, bees cleansed and protected. Hittite ceremonies sent bees away after spiritual work was done. Honey and wax featured in amulets and spells. The bee was a messenger, a healer, a tiny link between worlds. To people of the ancient world, honey was no mere treat. It had mysterious healing powers. Long before the discoveries about bacteria or chemistry, people knew honey eased wounds, soothed coughs, and kept the dead from spoiling. It was believed to have a touch of magic, though the reasons were not fully understood. In Egypt, honey was at the center of medicine. Ancient texts, like the Ebers Papyrus from around 1550 BCE, list honey in hundreds of cures, mixed with herbs and oils to heal injuries, fight infection, and settle upset stomachs. Doctors applied honey to burns, probably noticing its natural ability to clean and protect. The Greeks continued this tradition. Hippocrates recommended honey for coughs, stomach troubles, and even fatigue. Athletes drank honeyed water to regain strength. In India, Ayurvedic healers gave honey special respect, advising it as a safe medicine, a ritual offering, and a food to cleanse the body and spirit. In Rome, Pliny the Elder wrote that honey was vital for poultices, syrups, laxatives, and soothing the wounded after battle. Wax, too, had uses in medicine, for balms, bandages, and even early dental work. Honey's preservative, cleansing qualities saved lives from ancient times, and its reputation as the medicine of the gods was well earned. Beekeepers were not just gatherers. They were inventors and naturalists, learning through careful observation and practical skill. The design of the hive itself was crucial. Egyptians popularized solid clay tubes, sturdy and movable to follow flowerings. Greeks and Romans improved designs, adding baskets and boxes with lids, letting keepers take only what was needed and allow bees to go on thriving year after year. To calm bees, smoke was the best tool, often blown through specially crafted pipes or pots, hiding the warning scent that would otherwise make bees aggressive. The Romans sometimes added herbs to give a gentle aroma. For collecting, wooden or metal knives sliced neat combs. Wax was separated for later use, honey pressed and poured into clay jars sealed away from air and water. Honey found in ancient tombs, still edible millennia later. Some beekeepers wore little protection besides their own familiarity and caution, trusting long-earned skill over thick suits or gloves. They learned the bees' habits, the seasons for swarming, the best places for hives, the best times to move colonies. In many places, hives were carried long distances, letting bees reach the best flowers, a practice still mirrored in today's commercial beekeeping. Even the spiritual side mattered. Some keepers performed offerings or rituals to earn bees' favor, as much a part of their practice as tending the hive or harvesting honey. Across history, beekeeping brought together careful craft, keen watchfulness, and a sense of something sacred in the circle of life and work. The earliest practice of beekeeping shaped a centuries-long partnership between people and bees. Far removed from a simple rural job, early beekeeping was a craft that bridged medicine, prayer, economy, and the rhythms of nature across many civilizations. The skills developed across time, from Egypt's movable clay tubes to Greek observation, from Hittite sacred rites to Roman enterprise, laid the foundation for modern beekeeping. The careful respect for bees and their patterns fostered a way of living close to the earth, even before words like sustainability were ever spoken. Honey's healing, lasting sweetness shaped early medicine, its magic trusted on wounds and in ritual. Wax carried technology into cosmetics and art. Bees themselves became lasting emblems, both practical and symbolic, representing order, unity, and the blessings of unseen worlds. The idea that bees connect nature with the sacred still lingers, as does the ancient practice of moving hives to follow the seasons, vital for farming to this day. The methods created by ancient keepers helped plant the seeds for today's understanding of bees as crucial pollinators, and of the urgent need to care for the environment they and we depend on. Through all advances since, the essential bond between people and bees remains. We depend on bees for our food, health, and so much more, and they have left a deep print on our culture and spirit, right from the dawn of civilization. The story of beekeeping in ancient times is proof of human adaptability, respect for small wonders, and the power of working together within the hive and between our species. Even the smallest creatures can change the world, bit by bit, one bee, one promise at a time.